OK, should Labour let Diane Abbott stand for Parliament in this election? This is a crazy question, isn't it? Because you think, well, she's Labour and she's, it's an election. Why isn't she standing? She's got a massively safe seat in London. But there's a real row over whether she can stand. And it's more than rumbling now. It's gone volcanic. So she spoke in her constituency last night. She said she wanted to be the area's MP for as long as possible. But she'd been expected to leave Parliament in an arrangement where she was given back the Labour whip. So she made some comments about... Let me just explain the background. She wrote a letter to The Observer about a year ago, where the words were badly chosen, to say the least. And she was talking about different kinds of racism and essentially suggesting that black people suffered far worse racism than any other group. So, and she accepted it was a silly letter to write and offensive and else. She was then suspended by Labour in Parliament. Now, as the election got closer, the question is, does she then have the chance to stand for her seat? And they've put her back in the Labour Party, but she says they won't let her stand in her seat. So what do you think, Angela?
Well, I'm wondering whether the whip was restored because the thinking was that she was going to be able to retire gracefully, give her a bit of dignity in saying she retired as a Labour MP and therefore, put an end to her career. She was the first black woman MP to be elected. She was Shadow Home Secretary. She had a stellar career, all of those things. But amidst the row, we're forgetting something about what she said, and you've touched upon it here. She minimised the suffering and prejudice and racism that has been experienced by other groups, namely Jewish people, travellers and the Irish.
And she compared to people with ginger hair.
With ginger hair.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you categorically that I can walk down the street as a red-headed person and not feel my safety is compromised in any way. I've had a lot of unfortunate nicknames over the years, especially from boys, and not repeatable on this programme. But the fact is that I've never felt threatened by my hair colouring. I have felt, I'm not over-egging the pudding here, and I'm not catastrophising, the existential threat that Jewish people feel in this country now because of spiralling anti-Semitism has reached a critical point. My daughters felt it on campus. I know people in the workplace. I've had things called out to me as I'm walking to the synagogue. There's all sorts of things happening.
I know that because you and I have talked about that before, and I take it really seriously. However, she said, I don't know what the circumstances were about that letter, but as soon as she was called out for it, she said, my God, I shouldn't have written it.
No, hang on a second. So she wrote not one, but she said originally, the wrong draft was sent. Yeah. But then there was an investigation into that by the Jewish Chronicle, and it was unearthed that actually there were 2 copies of the letter. So there was pause for thought there. And the real tragedy in this case, let me be clear, is, I sound like Rishi Sunak, let me be clear, is that this is a woman who has been a figurehead and a champion of fighting racism. She was the first black female MP, for goodness sake.
But it sounds as if you think she's a busted flush now.
I think she is.
Right.
So she should have known better to even have that thought in her head to equate redheads with sort of the low-key minimising of
All right. Okay, so you think her letter was unforgivable.
Yeah.
Other people say it's a year ago. She said sorry. And she is this
2-hour online course.
Yeah, okay, all right. What do you think? Do you think that Labour are in the wrong here? Because there are, I should say we haven't got them, but there are clips of her last night. So she was at almost like a rally. So she goes to her constituency and she makes a speech. Yeah. And she says, I want to be your MP. And the ball is now in Keir Starmer's court because he has to decide, is he going to ban her?
I think that she had the whip taken away for a long while, a protracted length of time. I think that she definitely needed time to reflect. I think that what she said was absolutely appalling. And the fact that it was written, so it's not even as an off-the-cuff comment, this is something that you've taken time to write and say. So all of that is really bad. Should she be able to stand? I think she should be able to stand. Right. I think she has a 40-year career. I think that for her, it's not a job, it's a calling. She has to move through this world as a black woman, and that is very, very difficult.
Well, if you think about it, she was first elected in 1987, and the racism she experienced then was off the scale.
And 45% of the trolling that happened online at the last election towards women happened towards her.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable.
People say that in other countries there'd be a statue of her. She can't even get a seat for her own party. But maybe Labour are thinking more practically. They're thinking about the anti-Semitism scandal. They're thinking we don't want the left-wingers anymore.
So Starmer has hitherto badged himself as a moderate, although he did admit he was a socialist, sort of rather reluctantly this week. And that definitely the hard left flank of the party is what led to the collapse of Labour in 2019. So Starmer comes along. There was institutionalised anti-Semitism, there was hard left activism. I'm coming along as the moderate. I'm going to scourge the party of that.
Well, there he is with both of them.
Again, and make us electable. Although remember that Starmer, and I won't forgive him for this, he campaigned not once but twice for Jeremy Corbyn, who presided over this scandal of anti-Semitism, to become party leader and therefore Prime Minister.
I noticed that, just again catching you up with stuff overnight, that Labour, because the election was called quite quickly, they hadn't finalised who was standing in which seat for all the seats. And there's a couple of other casualties last night who are quite high-profile MPs, actually, who've been told they're not standing in their seats. One of them is a guy called Lloyd Russell Moyle. Now, obviously on the left, they're thinking, wait, this is a sudden push against the left to just suddenly stop them standing. I don't know whether you say, well, this is why Keir Starmer's electable. Janine in Birmingham, is he doing the right thing if he stops her?
No, he's not. Yes, he is. Sorry. Hello.
Sorry, no, what do you mean? You think you want her to stand or not?
Yeah, I do.
You do? So
she should be on the front bench.
Okay, so you forgive the letter, which Angela doesn't forgive, and you've moved beyond that.
It was the past. People make mistakes and they're forgiven. Boris Johnson was forgiven for his mistakes during COVID. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes, but I expect to be let do what I want to do. She should stand. She should get her whip again. She should be on the front bench because she's got a lot to say. She's a lovely lady. I know what she said was wrong.
Well, she's not in the centre of the Labour Party anymore. It's moved right. She's on the left.
She should. Well,
she should be.
She should. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Janine. Thank you. It's very interesting. Is it unfair on Diane Abbott to stop her standing? Deirdre in Northumberland, what do you think?
Good morning, Jeremy. Well, all the saints are in heaven, and I wish we all could choose our words very carefully. We all make mistakes. We all say things which are wrong. She apologised. The fact that the lady apologised, I've been a party member since 1969. I've never been so angry as I have over this. Starmer's ruling with an iron fist, a bit like Putin. There's no difference. He once raided the left. And, Tony Blair, I had my run-ins with Tony Blair, but, he never expelled. It was a broad church. The Labour Party is a broad church.
Actually, you raised an interesting point. There were people inside Labour who, I think Galloway was expelled maybe, but very few people expelled by Blair. That's a good point. Maybe expelling people is a sign of weakness.
I think that there just needs to be meaningful restoration. I think that a 2-hour training course on what it means to be Jewish or a traveller is just simply not enough. You have to immerse yourself in those communities to fully, in the same way that we have to immerse ourselves in the black community to fully understand.
Well, she's had a year of being on the back benches, but...
Carrie makes an important point. Imagine if the chips were stacked up the other way and somebody had minimised the suffering of black people, and I loathe
which they do every day.
Which they do every day, but I'm talking about a politician doing it. I loathe this competitive suffering. All racism is abhorrent. The point I'm making is that Diane Abbott should have known better. The fact she had the whip withdrawn shows how serious it was. Let the Labour Party move on. She had her time. She was Shadow Home Secretary.
But show that this you're not
into a new
Labour,
place.
Angela, but the idea that I'm guessing you're not a paid-up Labour supporter.
I've got the colour on.
I think it might have come out before now. But the idea that the Labour Party of 2024 has Natalie Elphicke in it,
Absolutely.
who is to the right of Jacob Rees-Mogg, and then throws out Diane Abbott. Well, how do we make sense of that?
We don't. And the thing is that the whole cliche of 2 wrongs don't make a right. And the problem here is, I agree with the Natalie Elphicke thing, is that Starmer is a weather-vane politician. He will go which way the wind blows in order to shore up his political position and get elected. I've mentioned already about being a fervent supporter of Corbyn.
But throwing out Diane Abbott is not a weather-vane thing to do.
But you can say at least... No, but he is weather-vane in the sense that if he is badging himself as a moderate who has reinvigorated the Labour Party, we're not having any of these kind of hard left politics. How about
Okay,
listen, show
let
and
me just
tell?
get some more calls. Thank you, Deirdre, by the way. Great to hear from you. Caroline in London, what do you think? Are they making a big mistake here, Labour?
Yes, they are. In fact, the point that I wanted to say, you actually said it, where the actual Labour leader shows his hypocrisy by having someone from the Conservatives that have said worse than Diane and has accepted her openly in the party, where Diane made a mistake, a clumsily mistake, as a black person that's born in this country. I've experienced racism several times. And I think what Diane should have said a bit more eloquently was that you won't know if someone is Jewish unless they say. But you'll know that I'm black because of the colour of my skin.
Yeah, I think we might get back into trench warfare with Angela on that one. Hey, listen, tell me this, Caroline.
Then of course Angela's going to say that.
Well,
No. Sorry, may I, Jeremy?
Go on, yes, you may.
If I may. Caroline, I'm appalled that you have experienced, because of the colour of your skin, any kind of racism. It's disgusting and abhorrent, and I would stand next to you shouting out against any kind of racism. I think precisely because you have experienced, you should know that any kind of competitive suffering should be equally absolutely repugnant. Because just because you say that I don't look Jewish, if I want to wear a Star of David, okay, that's my choice to put it on or take it off. There are lots of people who are visibly Jewish, or it can be because of their surname, it can be connoted because of where they live or the communities they move amongst. And I think it's absolutely bang out of order, and unfortunately undermines a very good argument that you otherwise make about Diane Abbott's position.
Can you work out what's going on here, Caroline? Because I've been looking at it thinking, I reckon they said to Diane, all right, we'll bring you back into Labour, but in exchange, you've got to agree not to stand. And she may have agreed verbally, but for whatever reason, publicly, she's now said she's been barred, and Labour have got no answer. So I don't know, it's very tricky.
Well, again, I don't believe that they actually made a deal like that. Just like I can't believe that Keir Starmer didn't know what was going on when they actually made the decision in December. And every time it's gone on.
Let me play a clip of Keir Starmer, because this is from yesterday talking about it.
No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott. The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip the other day. So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her.
Right, but that's different from saying, and she is standing for her party in Hackney and Stoke Newington. Caroline, thank you so much. Ray's in Nottingham. Ray, if you were Keir Starmer, would you let her stand?
Yes, I would let her stand. Basically, Keir Starmer and his cronies or advisors have let this drag on for over a year. Absolutely ridiculous. Keir Starmer was a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. So was my personal MP in Nottingham. That's Lillian Greenwood. I regard them both as hopeless. I shall never vote again because of the political shenanigans that's going on. I'm not affiliated to any party, but Diane Abbott, because of the way she's been treated, should be allowed to stand for a constituency. She's not going to be a front bencher. She's acting as a community officer for a constituents.
All right, Ray, thank you.
That should be it.
There are lots of people saying the same thing. I mean, I don't think I've heard anyone today on the phone saying that she should be banned. It's really interesting. Okay, thanks, Ray. Thanks, everyone.